What kind of relationship do you have with your food? Is food your friend or is it your enemy? Do you spend a lot of time thinking or worrying about what you're going to eat or regretting what you already did eat? Do you try every single new diet plan that comes along, always hoping that finally this is going to be the one that works for you, but then it never is? Whether you love food or you hate it, the truth is you're going to have a relationship with that food for the rest of your life. But the relationship isn't just about the food. It's also about the relationship you have with yourself. And healing your relationship with food begins by learning to love and honor yourself and to love and honor your magnificent body. It begins by learning to trust that you have the power to make really good choices to nourish yourself and your body. And then it's about taking the anxiety out of making those choices. If you're struggling with your relationship with food, let's explore some ways to eat that might just help ease your anxiety. Today, I'm going to share my 3 simple rules for healthy eating. Nothing complicated, no list of what you can eat and what you can't eat. Just a sane, sensible approach to eating, both for your physical health and to ease our anxiety. Rule number 1 is to eat a balanced diet. And that means eating something from all the food groups at every meal, including carbohydrates. And I know there's been a lot of talk lately about limiting carbohydrates or just not eating them at all. But, research shows that those carbs play a really important role in our physical health. And more importantly, at least to me, they play a role in easing our anxiety. I mean, really. In an article in the MIT News, Judith Wortman writes, quote, "When a person stops eating carbohydrates, his brain stops regulating serotonin, a chemical that boosts mood." She notes that only carbohydrate consumption naturally activates the production of serotonin. What does that mean? It means simply, if you want to feel good, if you want to release that serotonin, that chemical that makes you feel good, you need to eat some carbohydrates. That said, not all carbs are created equal. There are actually 2 kinds of carbohydrates, what we call the good carbohydrates or the complex carbohydrates, and what we call the bad carbohydrates or the simple carbohydrates. And I'm going to start by just looking at the good carbohydrates, the complex carbs. These are found in foods like beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, vegetables, whole fruits, whole grains. They're an incredibly important source of energy for our bodies. Eating them helps us feel fuller longer, which I'm all in favor of. They help regulate blood sugar. And as I said, they help us feel better emotionally. On the other hand, the bad or simple carbohydrates are all about sugar. And it's the kind of sugar that occurs naturally in foods, or it's the kind of sugar that gets added to so many of the products we eat every day. And you'll see them on the label, things like dextrose, sucrose, maltose, glucose, all the O's on those labels, and then the syrups. And there are so many other names for sugar that we've come up with. All sugar. And all these simple or bad carbs are refined And that refining process takes out the fiber as well as a lot of the vitamins and minerals. So the bad or simple carbs offer very little in the way of nutritional value. And even worse, they are quickly digested. And let me explain a little bit about how that works and why we would like to avoid it if we could. When we eat something sugary, let's say a donut, or whatever you'd like, we get this quick burst of energy. Our blood sugar shoots up and our body, we have that burst of energy, but our body burns through that sugar, those simple carbohydrates, really quickly, sort of like fire burns through kindling. So the simple carbs give us that burst of energy that's quickly followed by this crash as our blood sugar levels plummet. We go up, and then we go down. And get this, that crash, that downward spiral is often accompanied by the same symptoms, the same physical symptoms we get with anxiety. And you know what I'm talking about. You shake all over, your hands sweat, your heart feels like it's going to pound out of your chest. It feels awful. We feel awful. And when we feel awful, we want to do something to help us feel better. So what could we do? Guess what we do? Right. We eat more sugary foods, looking for that instant high, that rush of energy that we get when we eat those simple carbs. And the thing is, that sugar does work to make us feel better. We do feel better briefly. We go up and we feel better, and then we go down. And our blood sugar crashes and down we go. And then we get trapped in that ugly cycle of going up and then going down, going up and down. And that's not the only way. Sugar makes us anxious. Sarah Lindbergh writes on healthline.com. All of these are hers, and I'm going to quote them all. Sugary foods can weaken the body's ability to respond to stress. So we're less able to respond to stress. Diets high in sugar can impair cognitive functioning. Drinking high levels of sugar-sweetened beverages impair decision-making and memory. And finally, this is the one that caught my attention. Quote, withdrawal symptoms from sugar can actually resemble those of certain addictive substances. Yikes. You heard me. Withdrawal, addiction. And I get this because I have been addicted to sugar more than once. I have been addicted to sugar for another day. We'll talk later. But anyway, let's face it, sugar is delicious. It's available everywhere. It's all around us. It's in a lot of our processed foods. Sugar makes the world a sweeter place. But the truth is, sugar is not our friend. The less we eat of it, the better. But notice, I'm not saying no sugar. I'm not here without my ice cream. What I'm saying is, think of sugar as a special treat, not for every day. Again, the word balance. I always say to myself, think sometimes, not all the time. All right. So complex carbs are important for your mental health. But if you want to get really serious about easing your anxiety, you're also going to want to add some protein to every meal. Now, we all know there are lots of sources of protein to choose from, and you get to pick eggs, fish, nuts, beans, lentils, cheese, tofu, on and on it goes. But this may surprise you. Let me be honest. This surprised me. If you want to ease your anxiety, you may want to consider eating some meat. That's right. I said meat. And I know lots of people have all sorts of different, very important reasons for not eating meat. And as always, I beg you to make the decision that's right for you here. And I completely understand that this may not be an option for you, and that's fine. But if we look at this solely through the anxiety lens for a moment, I want to tell you that recent research indicates that including some meat in your diet may actually help ease your anxiety. An article in the November 2021 issue of the Sapien Journal reports, and I quote, a systematic review of research published until June 18th, 2020 suggests, here it comes, people who consume meat on average experience lower levels of depression and anxiety. Research shows. And again, the decision of whether or not to eat meat is a completely personal one, not to be made lightly. Please do what's right for you. But if it is a possibility for you, you might want to consider an occasional hamburger or steak in your diet. You might find it's useful in easing your anxiety. And this brings me to the very last thing to consider when we're talking about balancing your food. And this was another surprise to me, but this is to include some fat in your diet. It shocked me because for years and years, fat has been the other devil, sugar and fat, don't eat them. And we'd avoided fat at all costs. But in her brand new book, The Anatomy of Anxiety, Ellen Vora, MD, writes, and I quote this, and I'm going to tell you with the big capital letters, she says, I do not, all in caps, recommend that anyone struggling with anxiety eat a low-fat diet. In fact, one of the fastest ways to improve anxiety is to, again, this is in capitals, increase the healthy fat in your diet. Okay. Notice, she's just not talking about any old fat. She said healthy fat. She's talking about fats like olive oil, avocado oil, things like nuts and avocados and coconuts. Between you and me, things that make the diet delicious as far as I'm concerned. So I'm taking this as good news. And as Dr. Vora writes, quote, eating a reasonable amount of fat with every meal helps to stabilize blood sugar and prevents your body from experiencing the shakiness and irritability of false anxiety. So I think of that this way. When we talked about simple sugar burning like kindling and you go up and down, fat and meat burn more slowly, more like logs. They keep your blood sugar steady. And that helps keep your body and your mind steady and calm. So first rule for eating to anxiety is balance. Okay, so eating a balanced diet was the first rule. The second rule is to eat a variety of foods. Not only does eating a variety of foods make your life much more interesting and fun, when you eat a variety of foods, you're much more likely to get the nutrition your body and your brain need for good health. So maybe you want to try mixing things up a little bit. Try a new food, a new recipe, eat an omelet for dinner or leftover chili for breakfast. Change it around. And look, if you're eating the same green beans every night of the week, you know who you are because others of us might be guilty. I suggest you spend some time, just go over to the fresh fruit and vegetable section of your local grocery store and look around. Look at the color, the variety. If you don't like green peppers, there's yellow and orange and red. If you don't like zucchini, I really don't like zucchini or summer squash, but I love butternut. And purple potatoes are just plain delicious. So lots of color. And now I know buying those fruits and vegetables can be expensive, but so to get more of a bang for your buck, buy in season. And this is a great rule of thumb. Remember, in the winter, you want to choose vegetables that grow below the ground, things like potatoes and turnips and carrots. And in the summer, you want vegetables that grow above the ground, like green beans, tomatoes, peppers, that kind of thing. Finally, add some spice. Adding spice adds new life and new excitement to the same old meatloaf. Or anything else that you eat a lot. And when I talk about spice, I do not mean pouring hot sauce or ketchup over everything. I'm talking about seasoning your food with delicious spices like parsley, sage, rosemary, oregano. And if you're interested in eating to ease your anxiety, research shows that adding some saffron, turmeric, and or ginger to your food can really be effective in reducing anxiety. Now, as an aside to the idea of variety and balance, it turns out that the order you eat that variety and balance of food matters to your health. According to an article in WebMD, quote, new research found that having protein and vegetables before carbohydrates was linked to lower blood sugar and insulin levels after the meal. So, when you start by eating your vegetables and your protein first, you keep your blood sugar steadier. And as I said, steady blood sugar levels keep our moods and emotions steady. It keeps us from going, from having that lift and that crash. And if you want to learn more about the order of foods, see the WebMD article by Mary Elizabeth Dallas. I left the link in the show notes. All the other articles are linked there too. Okay, we've talked about balance and variety as the first two rules for eating to ease anxiety. Rule number 3 is moderation. Moderation is simply eating a reasonable amount of food. And why is this important to us, to those of us with anxiety? Because as I know from personal experience, overeating can make us anxious, both physically and emotionally. Physically, it can give us symptoms like chest pains, heart palpitations, lightheadedness, and it goes without saying, indigestion. Emotionally, it can cause feelings of regret, shame, and failure. Choosing to eat moderately can make you feel more comfortable physically, and more importantly, it can help ease your anxiety. And it is a huge step forward in helping you heal your relationship with food. And I know, I feel like I'm there with you and you're thinking, or you're saying out loud, easy for you to say, Wendy, not so easy to do. I hear you. I get it. I've had my own issues with food over the years, but I want to share today something that works for me. You know how when you go to the gas station, you pump your own gas, how when your tank is full, the nozzle makes that clicking sound and that you get that sensation in your hand. It says, that's enough. Well, our bodies make the same kind of click and sensation when our tank is full. And the thing is, we don't even notice it. We just keep eating until the plate is clean or the bag is empty. But our body lets us know when it's full, and it lets us know by sighing. When we sigh while eating, it's that kind of click that tells us that our tank, our body is full. Now, you may have never noticed that sigh before, but start to listen for it when you're eating. Try it for the next meal. That sigh is your body's way of saying, okay, had enough. It's that simple. And if you want to eat a moderate amount, all you have to do is eat until you sigh. That's it. Eat till you sigh, then stop. It works for me most of the time, I admit, not all the time, but I'm hoping you'll go ahead and give it a try. Just see what it feels like to at least listen to your body and then to honor and support its needs. All right. I hope this has been helpful for all of you. The 3 rules for eating for good physical and mental health are balance, variety, and moderation. But more importantly, healing your relationship with food is about loving and trusting yourself to make good choices most of the time, and to forgive yourself when you don't, because I'm working on this too, but none of us are perfect, and we don't have to do this perfectly either. We just have to do our best to make smarter, healthier choices. If what I'm saying here has piqued your interest and you want to learn more, especially about which foods are best for easing anxiety and which foods to avoid, I have 3 full chapters on this in my book, Calm and Sense. Chapter 44, Nourish Yourself. Chapter 45, Eat and Drink This. And chapter 46, Don't eat or drink this. I wanted to make this super easy for people. So I collected up everything I've learned about how food affects anxiety, and I put it into those 3 chapters. And while it's really easy to find advice on diets and healthy eating, this information is particular to those of us with anxiety. And I sincerely hope that it helps you and your relationship to food. Again, the book is called Calm and Sense, and you can find it online and in finer bookstores everywhere. I have more information about it on my website at wendyleeds.com/book. And you can see the show notes for a link, so you don't have to type anything. And just a brief note about this podcast. I'm going to be taking a short break for the remainder of the summer, so don't get worried if you don't see another episode come up over your feed over the next few weeks. I'm planning to be back in mid-September with a whole new set of episodes on practical strategies for easing anxiety and managing it in our day-to-day lives. Thank you, as always, for listening. Happy eating. Until we're together again, I wish you peace, joy, and love.